Colonel Robert Hayes was 68 years old when they assigned him to forward operating Base Kirkuk. As a senior advisor, put out to pasture, the young officers joked behind his back, too old to matter, too slow to keep up. A relic from wars nobody cared about anymore, the colonel heard every word of it. He had been hearing it for 3 years since they transferred him from active command to advisory roles, desk jobs, mentorship positions, roles designed to ease old soldiers into retirement without hurting their pride. Hayes has served for 45 years, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan, more deployments than most of the young lieutenants had years alive, but none of that mattered to them. They saw gray hair, heard stories about wars from history books, watched him move slower than they did. They did not see the decades of experience. The battles survived, the lessons learned in blood and fire. Then came the day a young lieutenant froze during his first real firefight. Radio chatter turned to screaming, soldiers pinned down, no clear orders, panic spreading like wildfire through the company, and the old man everyone dismissed took the radio. His voice was calm, steady, the voice of someone who had been here 1,000 times before. Listen to me. I am going to get you through this. Do exactly what I say. You are going to be fine. 40 soldiers heard that voice, and 40 soldiers made it home that night, because the old colonel they mocked knew exactly what to do when everything went wrong. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe so you never miss these true tales of courage, and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Robert Hayes joined the Army in 1976 at age 18. He was too young for Vietnam by just 2 years, but old enough to serve in its shadow. The Army in the late 70s was rebuilding, trying to move past the trauma of a lost war, trying to find its identity again. Hayes found his purpose there, not in combat, but in leadership, in the quiet work of training soldiers, making them better, keeping them alive. He rose through the ranks slowly but steadily, made sergeant by 25, lieutenant by 30, captain by 35. Desert Storm in 1991 was his first real war. He was a company commander, led 120 soldiers through Iraq, brought all of them home alive. That became his reputation. The commander who brought everyone home. Iraq in 2003 was different, more complex, more dangerous. Hayes was a lieutenant colonel by then, leading a battalion, 800 soldiers under his command. He lost 3 soldiers in that deployment, 3 names that haunted him for years afterward. 3 families he visited personally to apologize for not bringing their sons home. Afghanistan followed, then another Iraq rotation, then advisory roles in countries most Americans could not find on a map. By age 65, the Army suggested retirement. He had earned it, pension, benefits, a quiet life after 43 years of service. Hayes said, "No thank you, sir. I'm not done yet." They compromised, made him an advisor, sent him to bases where his experience could mentor younger officers, where he could share lessons without carrying a rifle anymore. The young officers did not want his lessons. They had been trained on new technology, new tactics, new ways of fighting wars. What could an old man who learned to fight in the Cold War teach them about modern combat? Hayes tried anyway, sat in briefings, offered suggestions, pointed out potential problems based on patterns he had seen before. The lieutenant smiled politely, nodded, ignored him as soon as he left the room. "Old man does not understand modern warfare," one captain said after a briefing, where Hayes had warned about potential ambush sites. "He is from a different era," a lieutenant added. "Wars are not fought the same way anymore." Hayes heard it all. He always did, but he kept showing up, kept offering advice, kept trying to pass on lessons that had cost him 3 soldiers to learn, because he knew something the young officers did not. War changes its technology, its tactics, its weapons, but human nature never changes. Fear, panic, the fog of combat when everything goes wrong, and training vanishes under pressure. Those were constants, and Hayes had spent 45 years learning how to navigate them. Lieutenant Marcus Webb was 24 years old and leading his first real combat patrol. He had been in country for 3 months, trained at West Point, top marks in tactics and strategy. Eager to prove himself, Colonel Hayes had tried to talk to him before the patrol, mentioned that the route passed through terrain perfect for ambushes, suggested alternate approaches. Webb had listened politely, then proceeded with his original plan. The ambush came at 14:30 hours in a narrow valley with high ridges on both sides. The first RPG hit the lead vehicle. The second hit 30 seconds later. Small arms fire erupted from 3 positions. Webb's patrol was trapped. 6 vehicles. 20 for soldiers. Enemy fire coming from elevated positions they could not effectively return. Webb grabbed the radio. His voice was tight with stress. Contact. We have contact. Multiple positions. Taking fire. Base command responded. What is your status, Lieutenant? Do you have casualties? Webb's training told him to assess. Establish security. Coordinate return fire. Call for support. But training assumed you could think clearly when bullets were snapping past your head and soldiers were screaming. Webb froze, not physically. He was still moving, still holding the radio, still trying to give orders. But mentally he hit a wall. Too much happening at once. Too many variables. Too many lives depending on decisions he was not ready to make. I need what we need. His voice cracked over the radio. Enemy positions on the ridge. Multiple. I need air support. No, wait. I need to move the vehicles. We need to. His words tumbled over each other. Incomplete thoughts. Contradictory orders. The soldiers in his patrol heard their commander losing control. Fear spreads faster than fire in combat. In the base operations center, Colonel Hayes sat in the back of the room listening to the radio traffic. He had been listening to combat radio chatter for 45 years. He could hear panic in a voice the way a doctor hears symptoms. Webb was in trouble, and if someone did not intervene quickly, 24 soldiers were going to pay for it. Hayes stood up, walked calmly to the radio operator. May I? The operator looked at the senior officer on duty, Major Simmons, young, competent. But he had never been in a situation like this. Simmons hesitated. Protocol said the chain of command handled situations like this. Hayes was just an advisor, but Simmons had seen the look in Hayes' eyes. The look of someone who knew exactly what needed to happen. Go ahead, Colonel. Hayes took the handset. His voice changed instantly. Not the quiet advisory tone he used in briefings. This was command voice, honed over decades. The voice that cut through chaos like a knife. Webb, this is Colonel Hayes. I need you to listen to me. Take a breath. Focus on my voice. I am going to walk you through this. Lieutenant Webb heard that voice through his radio, and something in him steadied. Not because Hayes outranked him, not because of protocol, but because that voice carried absolute certainty, the kind that comes only from experience. Sir, we are pinned down. I do not know. Stop. Hayes' voice was firm, but not harsh. You are doing fine. This situation is manageable. I have been exactly where you are right now, and I'm going to tell you how to get out of it. Webb took a breath. Okay, sir. I am listening. First, casualties. Do you have wounded? Yes, sir. To wounded. Shrapnel wounds. Not critical yet. Good. Assign your medic to them. Get them stable. That is handled now. Done, sir. Second, return fire. You cannot hit the ridge positions effectively from down there, but you can keep them from advancing. Suppressive fire on all 3 positions. Not aiming, just volume. Copy that, sir. Hayes could hear the change already. Webb's voice was stronger now. He had tasks, specific actions, things he could control. Third, you need to move. That valley is a kill box. The longer you stay, the worse it gets. Do you see the bend in the road about 200 meters ahead? Yes, sir. I see it. That is your objective. Get your vehicles there. The ridge ends at that point. You will have cover and better firing positions. Move 1 vehicle at a time. Leapfrog. Suppressive fire covers each move. Sir, what if they hit us while we are moving? They might. But staying where you are guarantees they will eventually hit you. Movement gives you a chance. Staying still guarantees you lose. The logic was clear. Simple. The kind of tactical thinking that seems obvious once someone says it, but impossible to see when you are in the middle of chaos. Understood, sir. Moving now. Hayes stayed on the radio, guiding each movement, calling out when to move, when to fire, when to take cover. His voice never wavered, never showed doubt, never revealed that he was sitting 30 kilometers away in an operations center with no direct control over what happened. He spoke like he was standing right there in the valley with them. Vehicle 1, move now. Good. Good. Vehicle to get ready. Wait for the covering fire. Now. Move. One by one the vehicles repositioned. Soldiers moved with purpose now instead of panic, because someone was telling them exactly what to do. Someone who knew. Enemy fire intensified. An RPG hit close enough to flip 1 vehicle partially. Soldiers scrambled out, dragged a wounded with them. Webb's voice came back shaky. Sir, we have another vehicle disabled. 3 more wounded. How bad? Walking wounded, sir. We can move them. Then move them. You are almost to the bend. 2 more vehicles. You can do this, Lieutenant. The words were simple, but the confidence behind them was everything. 20 minutes after the ambush began, the last vehicle made it around the bend to cover positions. The enemy fire stopped. The insurgents had lost their advantage. Without the high ground and trap patrol, they had nothing. Air support arrived 10 minutes later. Medevac choppers 15 minutes after that. Every soldier made it out. Some wounded, but all alive. In the operations center, he set down the radio handset. His hand was shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Major Simmons stared at him. Sir, that was. I have never seen anyone do that. He shook his head. That was not me, Major. That was Lieutenant Webb. He did the hard part. I just reminded him he knew what to do. But it was not true, and everyone in that room knew it. Without Hayes' voice, without his experience, without the calm authority that comes only from having survived situations exactly like that one, 24 soldiers might not have made it home that night. Lieutenant Webb walked into the operations center 3 hours after the ambush. His uniform was torn, face streaked with dust and sweat, eyes carrying the weight of his first real combat. He found Colonel Hayes sitting at a desk filling out paperwork. Sir, may I speak with you? Hayes looked up. Of course, Lieutenant. Are you all right? I am fine, sir. My soldiers are fine. Because of you. Webb's voice cracked slightly. I froze, sir. I had all the training, all the preparation, and when it happened, I froze. If you had not been on that radio. Hayes stood up, walked around the desk, put a hand on Webb's shoulder. You did not freeze, Lieutenant. You hit a wall. Every combat leader hits it the first time things go bad. The difference between good leaders and dead ones is what happens next. But I could not think, could not make decisions. You made plenty of decisions. You kept your soldiers firing. You listened when you needed help. You executed the plan once you had one. That is not freezing. That is adapting. Webb shook his head. You saved us, sir. No, Hayes said firmly. You saved your soldiers. I just had the benefit of 45 years of mistakes to learn from. Mistakes I made. Friends who died teaching me lessons. You will learn those lessons too. But you get to learn them without losing anyone. That is what experience is for. They stood there for a moment. Young officer and old soldier. Separated by decades, but connected by the bond of combat. Thank you, sir. I will never forget this. Just pay it forward, Lieutenant. When you are my age and some young officer needs help, remember this moment. That is how we keep soldiers alive. We pass the lessons forward. Word spread through the base quickly. The old colonel, the one everyone joked about, the one they said was washed up and outdated. He had just talked an entire patrol through an ambush, brought everyone home alive, using nothing but experience and a calm voice. The jokes stopped. The dismissive comments ended. When Colonel Hayes walked through the base after that, soldiers stopped to shake his hand. Officers who had ignored him in briefings suddenly wanted to hear his stories. Captain Morrison, the one who said Hayes did not understand modern warfare, approached him in the dining facility. Sir, I owe you an apology. I said some things. I was wrong. Hayes smiled. You were not entirely wrong, Captain. I do not understand half the technology you use now. The drones, the digital systems. That is your world, not mine. Then how did you? Because people do not change. Fear, panic, the need for a steady voice when everything goes wrong. That has been the same since men started fighting wars. Technology changes. Human nature does not. Morrison nodded slowly. Will you teach me, sir? Not tactics, not technology. The other part. The part they do not teach at the academy. Hayes clapped him on the shoulder. I would be honored to do that, Captain. Colonel Hayes served 2 more years after that day. He stopped being an advisor in name only, started being what he had always wanted to be, a teacher for soldiers who finally wanted to learn. He held informal sessions in the evenings. Officers would gather in his office. He would tell stories, not war stories, lesson stories. The time he made a mistake that cost a soldier his life, what he learned from it, how he never made that mistake again. The time he was terrified and had to lead anyway. How fear never goes away, but you learn to function through it. The time he had to make a decision with incomplete information, and how you learn to trust your experience when data fails you. The young officer soaked it up. took notes, asked questions. They started calling him the professor, not as a joke, but with genuine respect. Lieutenant Webb became Captain Webb, then Major Webb. He kept in touch with Hayes long after both had moved to different bases. In every letter Webb wrote, he mentioned something Hayes had taught him, some situation where the lesson applied, some soldier who came home because Webb remembered what the old colonel had said. Hayes retired at age 70, 47 years of service, more than most people working their entire lives. The Army threw him a ceremony, medals, speeches, a flag folded with precision. But the moment that mattered came after the ceremony. 40 soldiers, the ones from that ambush, the ones Webb had led, the ones Hayes had talked through the valley, they formed up outside the ceremony hall, stood at attention as Hayes walked out, and as one they saluted, Hayes stopped, looked at them, saw young faces that were alive because experience had met panic in one. He returned the salute sharply. No words were needed. The message was clear. Thank you for keeping us alive. Thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for proving that age and experience still matter. 2 years after retirement, Hayes died peacefully in his sleep at age 72. At his funeral, the church was packed. Soldiers from 5 decades of service, generals, privates, everyone in between. Lieutenant Colonel Webb now gave the eulogy. Colonel Hayes taught me that leadership is not about knowing everything. It is about staying calm when everyone else is panicking, about having the experience to guide others through chaos, about never forgetting that every soldier is someone's son or daughter who deserves to come home. He taught me that age is not a weakness. It is proof you survived long enough to learn lessons that cannot be taught in classrooms. And he taught me that the most important thing a soldier can do is pass those lessons forward, so that the next generation does not have to learn them the hard way. Webb paused, voice thick with emotion. Colonel Hayes was 68 when everyone said he was too old to matter. And at 68, he saved 40 lives with nothing but his voice and his experience. That is a legacy that will never be too old. That is a lesson we will carry forever. The soldier stood, saluted the flag-draped coffin, and in that moment Robert Hayes received the honor he had always deserved, not for being young, not for being strong, but for being wise enough to know that sometimes the most powerful weapon is a calm voice when everything goes wrong. Age is not a weakness. It is proof you survived long enough to learn lessons that save lives. Colonel Hayes proved that experience matters, that calm leadership beats youthful energy when chaos strikes, that the quiet wisdom of those who have been there before is worth more than any technology or training. Subscribe so you never miss these stories of quiet strength and timeless courage. Tell us in the comments who is the experienced voice that guided you when you were lost. Sometimes the most powerful heroes are the ones everyone thinks are too old to matter.